At 2 a.m., I typed the sentence I had dodged for years, and the room went so quiet I could hear my pulse counted true. The notification on my screen was small, but it cracked the life I curated. Maya Ellis said, "If love needs me smaller, it is not love." Memory stuttered, offering careful edits, but my body held the uncut footage. Daniel Ross said, "You're overreacting," in a message that read like policy, not care. I remembered how praise always followed my shrinking, and how silence bought calm at compound interest. Noah Reed said, "You sounded different tonight," and the word different felt like an unlocked door. My hands shook because a bargain once saved me, and I had mistaken safety for belonging. I saw the ledger where tenderness was traded for compliance. The truth arrived like a verdict without ornament. I could no longer pretend the love I received was real when it required me to stay small, and the cost just became non-refundable. Morning found me rehearsing a smaller voice, then hearing how it scraped my throat. I brewed coffee like a ritual that used to calm the swarm, and the swarm kept flying. Maya Ellis said, "I made myself agreeable and called it love, and the kitchen tile felt colder for hearing it." I kept rules taught by the days I survived, and those rules kept me from living. Daniel Ross said, "Let's be reasonable," and my chest learned that reason had been a leash. Younger Maya tugged my sleeve in memory, asking if I would choose her now. Noah Reed said, "What if different means truer?" And the question stood like a doorway I had feared. I thought of the ledger, and how I logged my own vanishing. I wiped the counter, and the cloth lifted nothing but shine. The mask had slipped, and the day did not shatter, which terrified me more than the night. Work emails stacked like bricks, and I felt the wall they made inside my chest. Polite phrases offered me a familiar costume. Daniel Ross said, "Proud of how you de-escalate," and I remembered how I erased myself to earn that medal. The compliments carried a quiet bill at the bottom. Maya Ellis said, "I can decline without apology," and the sentence didn't break the room. Claire Morton said, "Timing matters," while nudging me back to the old choreography. Younger Maya crossed her arms in my mind, exact as math. Noah Reed said, "I'll cover if you need air," and the offer loosened a knot I had called posture. I typed fewer words, and meant more of them. The wall did not fall, but a brick shifted, and light came through like a narrow yes. By noon I called my sister, and heard our two histories collide in the same breath. Eva Ellis said, "You always took the hit," and the words landed like truth wrapped in grit. I wanted to defend our myth and also set it down. Maya Ellis said, "I learned early that quiet kept the peace," and the admission tasted like metal. Eva Ellis said, "Peace for who?" and the phone line hummed like a wire pulled tight. The room tilted as a memory I trusted bent at the edge. I felt younger and older in the same minute, like a tree counting its rings. Younger Maya watched my face for a promise I had not made. Noah Reed texted a check-in that read, like a hand at my back. I breathed until the floor steadied under both names. Evening arrived with the same city noise, and I noticed how the volume no longer decided my size. I wrote the sentence again on paper to learn its weight. Maya Ellis said, "I will not audition for care," and the pencil dug a groove that felt like a road. Daniel Ross said, "Let's reset," and the word reset smelled like fresh paint over mold. Noah Reed said, "Proud of you for naming it," and the pride did not require me to disappear. Younger Maya unclenched in my chest like a door yielding. I looked at the ledger and drew a line under the old balance. I did not know the next shape of my life, only that smallness was too expensive. I closed the notebook and let the quiet be proof. I traced the beginning to a kitchen where quiet meant survival, and praise arrived when I disappeared. The wound taught me to be useful first and honest later. Maya Ellis said, "If I am needed, I am safe," and the lie nodded like a shepherd. The mask learned my schedule and wore my smile to meetings. Daniel Ross said, "You keep the peace," and the metal pinned itself to my throat. I wanted belonging that did not invoice my voice. I needed authorship that did not ask permission. Noah Reed said, What if you do not negotiate with your worth? And the question sounded like weather breaking. I remembered a room where I folded myself smaller and called it kindness. The truth kept knocking even when the ritual tried to drown it out. I keep a private rule that I never say aloud. If someone is unsettled, I must be the cushion. The rule kept me hireable, agreeable, indispensable, and missing. Claire Morton said, "You're so reliable," and the word reliable shackled my ankles with velvet. Maya Ellis said, "I do not want to be furniture," and the sentence surprised my mouth. Daniel Ross said, "Let's not make this personal," and I felt how policy erases pain. Younger Maya stood at the edge of my memory, waiting for rescue. I wanted ease without erasure. I needed boundaries that did not beg to be believed. "Noah Reed," said "try no," and the syllable rang like metal struck true. The mask is expert at hospitality. It lays out tea, cushions the silence, and invoices my spine. I track how many apologies I issue before I breathe. Maya Ellis said, "I am tired of refunding other people's discomfort," and the room did not strike back. Eva Ellis said, "We learned to smooth storms we did not cause," and the sentence found its chair. Daniel Ross said, "Your tone matters," and my chest counted the edits he could not see. Noah Reed said, "Your no can be kind," and kindness grew teeth. I wanted a life where my face belonged to me. I needed a voice unbraided from performance. Younger Maya tugged my sleeve until I looked down and chose her. I test a boundary the way you test thin ice. I step, listen, step again. Claire Morton said, "Could you take this on?" and the reflex reached for yes. Maya Ellis said, "I am at capacity," and the sentence stood on its own legs. Daniel Ross said, "Disappointing," and the old alarm rang as if I had pulled a fire switch. Noah Reed said, "Your capacity is data," and the metric felt holy. The air did not shatter. The sky did not file a complaint. Younger Maya tucked closer, learning my temperature. I wanted to stop auditioning for rooms I already earned. I needed to let the echo of no become a shelter. By night, the ritual feels thinner. The tea cools before I drink it. I open the ledger where I once balanced peace against self. Maya Ellis said, "My want is partnership," and I wrote it without apology. I added what I need beneath it and refused to blur the lines. Noah Reed said, "Let me match your honesty," and the match did not burn me. Eva Ellis said, "Keep the door you built," and the sentence guarded the threshold. Daniel Ross said, "We value flexibility," and I knew the word meant bend until breaking. Younger Maya exhaled, and the room finally listened back. Pressure arrived like calendar invites that sounded innocent and felt sharp. Claire Morton said, "Quick favor," and I tasted the old yes on my tongue. I remembered the ledger and kept my mouth still. Daniel Ross said, "Leadership notices flexibility," and the promise smelled like varnish. Maya Ellis said, "Flexibility without consent is contortion," and the room cooled. The key charm at my wrist tapped the desk like a metronome. Younger Maya pointed at the word capacity written in my notebook. I wrote no, then erased the apology that followed. Noah Reed said, "I'll back your boundary in the meeting," and a new floor settled. Claire Morton said, "We'll discuss expectations," and the door in my chest narrowed. I closed the calendar tab and chose a smaller load and a larger cell. The meeting circled like a drain disguised as a round table. Daniel Ross said, "We were aligned on deliverables," while sliding new work toward me. Claire Morton said, "You're the safest pair of hands," and the compliment cuffed my wrists. Maya Ellis said, "Reassign this load," and silence gathered its witnesses. A spreadsheet contradicted last quarter's story with numbers that bruised my trust. Noah Reed said, "The metrics show uneven credit," and a chair scraped like flint. I felt the family myth echo. That peace kept the room intact. Younger Maya stared down the myth and did not blink. Daniel Ross said, "Let's keep this offline," and I heard who the quiet served. I named the imbalance, and the air changed shape. After the meeting, a letter waited on my desk like a polite threat. The policy cited process while misnaming my contribution. Maya Ellis said, "This is the paper wall," and my shoulders rose then settled. The letter praised my calm and erased my authorship with tidy language. One so read Guy Mom. Noah Reed said, "We can log provenance," and the word provenance felt like oxygen. Claire Morton said, "No need to escalate," and I recognized the velvet rope. Younger Maya tugged at the key charm, asking if doors still open for us. I wrote a precise reply and attached receipts. Daniel Ross said tone matters, and I heard whose tone frightened him. The ring of my real name in my mouth steadied my hand. I called Eva Ellis to test the floor under an older story. Eva Ellis said, "I remember you choosing quiet," and I felt the bruise of that phrasing. Maya Ellis said, "I chose survival," and the word rang clean. A photo album opened the door to a night we both named differently. Eva Ellis said, "I took the blame so you could breathe," and the room tilted. My memory clutched the opposite, that I absorbed the thunder for us both. Younger Maya stood between us, holding a ribbon like a flag. Noah Reed texted, "Memory is not a verdict," and the sentence steadied the air. I let two truths stand without merging them. The past did not change, but the story learned new pronouns. The week closed with a town hall where applause masked arithmetic. Daniel Ross said, "We're a family," and I counted the cost of that metaphor. Slides credited outcomes to leadership while skipping the work that breathed. Maya Ellis said, "Say the name of your labor," and my pulse found a beat. I asked a question that could not be unsaid. Claire Morton said, "This isn't the forum," and the room loved that sentence. Noah Reed said, "Transparency is the forum," and the quiet fractured. I saw who prospered when I stayed soft. Younger Maya nodded like a witness satisfied. The floor tilted, and I chose to stand where the angle hurt truest. The twist came not as thunder, but as a quiet folder opened on my screen. A draft from years ago carried my words under someone else's name. Maya Ellis said, "I built the myth they keep selling, and the keys burned beneath my hands." Daniel Ross said, "We've always been transparent," and the lie gleamed like glass. Claire Morton said, "That's how the system works," and I heard the gears grind bone. Noah Reed said, "Your authorship is carved here," and the carving steadied my breath. Younger Maya whispered, "Choose me first," and my ribs ached with loyalty. Eva Ellis said, "You gave away credit to stay safe," and the sentence rang like metal struck. I felt the twist crack my spine upright. The flaw was never weakness. The flaw was misnamed strength. I reread the draft and felt every erased line shouting back. Maya Ellis said, "I consented to vanish," and the words felt heavier for being true. Daniel Ross said, "Leadership shaped the story," and I remembered the day I handed him my voice. Claire Morton said, "Credit is collective," and the syllables dissolved my name. Noah Reed said, "They packaged your silence," and the phrase untangled a knot. Younger Maya glared with the rage I once tucked away. Eva Ellis said, "Our family called survival obedience," and the phrase bent the air. The twist spread through my body like ink dropped in water. The myth I served was authored by my own retreat, and I would not renew it. The memory replayed with new color, praise that once felt like rescue now stung like theft. Maya Ellis said, "The saving was a transaction," and my throat dried. Daniel Ross said, "I gave you opportunity, but his gift tag read obligation." Claire Morton said, "You wouldn't be here without him," and the hook sharpened. Noah Reed said, "Competence isn't disobedience," and the statement cut clean. Younger Maya asked, "Will you take back my name?" and the question ached. Eva Ellis said, "Truth protects better than bargains," and the ground tilted toward her voice. The twist was no longer private. It spilled into the present tense. The contract that once bound me unraveled under a single admission. I saw the mask slip in real time. Daniel Ross said, "Loyalty is rewarded," and his voice cracked like old paint. Claire Morton said, "Tone down the claim," but her tone bent brittle. Maya Ellis said, Integrity cannot be tone-polished, and the sentence stood bare. Noah Reed said, "You own your authorship," and the word ownership steadied my spine. Younger Maya stood taller in memory, ribbon like a torch. Eva Ellis said, "The mask cost us both," and the phrase clung like humidity. I felt every borrowed costume lose its seams. The twist became visible. The controller's strength required my silence, and silence had expired. The final turn came not as rage but as decision. Maya Ellis said, "The flaw was strength misnamed," and my chest widened. Noah Reed said, "Help exists where you stopped looking," and the words felt like permission. Eva Ellis said, "You are not disloyal for choosing yourself," and the line stitched me together. Younger Maya unclenched, ribbon lowering like a banner at rest. Daniel Ross said, "This will cost you," and for once I counted the cost and did not flinch. Claire Morton said, "There's still time to adjust," and I heard fear behind polish. I no longer asked what happened, but instead, who am I if I accept this? The twist locked itself inside me, irreversible. The choice arrived like a blade set gently on the table. Maya Ellis said integrity cost something visible, and the sentence felt carved in bone. Daniel Ross said, "Think about your future here," and the threat was disguised as care. Claire Morton said, "We all compromise," but her voice trembled. Noah Reed said, "Boundaries are not betrayal," and the phrase steadied me. Younger Maya clutched my sleeve in memory, reminding me of every night I shrank. Eva Ellis said, "Say it once and mean it," and my lungs filled differently. The air thickened, waiting for my answer. I opened my mouth and released a truth that could not be folded back inside. The decision became my only inheritance. The moment cut like glass. Maya Ellis said, "I will not renew the old contract," and silence arrived as witness. Daniel Ross said, "That's unwise," and his smile fractured. Claire Morton said, "Timing matters," but the words wilted. Noah Reed said, "Wisdom is not obedience," and the phrase burned steady. Younger Maya whispered, "Keep me," and my chest obeyed. Eva Ellis said, "This changes everything," and change walked into the room like a guest no one invited. I felt the bargain collapse with a soundless crack. The choice cost me their approval, but it bought me my voice. The ledger was finally mine to close. Oh, I carried the decision into the night, heavy and holy. Maya Ellis said, "Approval is no longer the price of my breath," and the city lights blurred. Daniel Ross said, "Doors will close," but I saw windows widening. Claire Morton said, "You'll regret this," and the warning felt recycled. Noah Reed said, "I'll stand beside your truth," and my bones steadied. Younger Maya unclenched her fists inside me, learning safety from my voice. Eva Ellis said, "We lost time to silence, don't lose more," and her sentence pressed forward. I knew belonging would shrink, but space had finally widened. Integrity had chosen me back. The climax sharpened in a single breath. Maya Ellis said, "I will not audition for care," and the words were irreversible. Daniel Ross said, "We expected loyalty," and his grip tightened on air. Claire Morton said, "There's still room to adjust," but the room had already changed shape. Noah Reed said, "The line is drawn," and the phrase steadied the floor. Younger Maya placed her ribbon on my desk in memory, satisfied at last. Eva Ellis said, "We will learn who stands with you," and I nodded. The old bargain lay in pieces. Integrity was not free, but it was mine. The climax closed with a boundary sealed in bloodless ink. Maya Ellis said, "The mask is retired," and the silence honored it. Daniel Ross said, "You'll regret losing what we gave," and his words fell flat. Claire Morton said, "You can still smooth this," but the surface had hardened. Noah Reed said, "Your choice is whole," and the word whole filled my lungs. Younger Maya bowed out of hiding, ribbon fading into peace. Eva Ellis said, "Now you stand in your own name," and I felt the truth land. Approval burned away, self remained. The cost was steep, and I paid it without looking back. Morning arrived without ceremony, and the quiet felt earned rather than imposed. I washed a single cup and let the sink breathe. Maya Ellis said, "Today I practice a smaller circle and a fuller voice," and the room held it. Noah Reed said, "I'll match your pace," and the offer did not ask for apology. The phone chimed with a policy update that misnamed last week, and I did not rush to correct it. Daniel Ross said, "We appreciate your continued flexibility," and the sentence no longer set my bones to bending. Claire Morton said, "We'll revisit resourcing," and I heard how later tried to smother truth. I wrote what I could carry and left the rest on the table without guilt. Younger Maya tugged the ribbon in memory and asked if breakfast could include us both. I buttered toast and did not ration the good jam. Eva Ellis said, "Proud of your boundary," and pride arrived without a leash. The ledger stayed closed and the key charm warmed under my wrist like a pulse. I let ordinary tasks name me competent without turning me invisible. At work the air felt different, not kinder, just honest about its edges. I declined the meeting labeled urgent and watched the building remain upright. Maya Ellis said, "Capacity is a boundary, not a rumor," and the calendar obeyed. Daniel Ross said, "We need your calm on this fire," and the request slid past without purchase. Claire Morton said, "Consider optics," and the mirror no longer frightened me. Noah Reed said, "I'll present the provenance," and the words still tasted like oxygen. A clerk from compliance mispronounced my name in an email, and I replied with precision rather than apology. Younger Maya clapped once inside my ribs and then grew quiet. I cut the report to what was true, nothing padded to please. The room did not turn cold, it turned accurate. Eva Ellis said, "Your no keeps the lights honest," and the phrase settled like ballast. I felt the scale tip toward a life that fit, not a costume that passed. After hours I walked the long block home and counted how many breaths belonged to me. The city noise offered no verdict, and I did not audition for one. Maya Ellis said, "Belonging can be quiet," and even the crosswalk agreed. A message from Daniel Ross arrived with softened tone and sharpened terms. Claire Morton said, "We're exploring a reframe," and the word reframe remembered the old varnish. I answered with clarity that did not seek points. Noah Reed said dinner, and no shop talk, and relief arrived like good weather. Younger Maya asked for a story where she does not bargain to be held. I told one, and did not edit the ending for comfort. Eva Ellis said, "I hear you taking up your own room," and my spine believed her. The sky bruised toward violet, and the ribbon in my pocket felt lighter. I walked slower, not to delay fear, but to practice staying. The weekend arrived like a room cleared of furniture, and I tested the echo. I cleaned the shelf where the old photo held its careful lie. Maya Ellis said, "Keep what keeps me," and a simpler arrangement emerged. Daniel Ross said, "We expect collaboration," and the sentence sounded smaller outdoors. Claire Morton said, "People are talking," and the chorus failed to move the sky. Noah Reed said, "Let them, then live," and I placed the ledger in a drawer I did not plan to open. Younger Maya ran a fingertip along the key charm and asked if we might go swimming. I laughed because the question once felt extravagant. Eva Ellis said, "Rehearse joy that does not apologize," and the instruction landed like sunlight. I cooked a meal that did not measure worth in servings. I chose music I loved before I learned to curate calm. The day ended cleaner than it began, and I did not chase anyone's weather. Sunday night, I wrote the week's small liturgy and let it be ordinary. Maya Ellis said, "My name is not a favor I owe," and the page absorbed it without flinching. The ritual of checking messages shrank to a glance that did not bend my breath. Daniel Ross said, looking forward to alignment, and I did not translate it into self-erasure. Claire Morton said, "There are optics to manage," and optics lost their jurisdiction at my door. Noah Reed said, "Tomorrow, we submit with your authorship up front," and the plan did not wobble. Younger Maya curled up inside the quiet and asked nothing but presence. Eva Ellis said, "Keep the door you built," and the hinge did not squeak. I set out clothes that felt like me rather than armor. I placed the ledger on the highest shelf, and the ribbon in a drawer that opens easily. The room hummed with the new ordinary, not louder, just truer. The final week began without spectacle, only the steady rhythm of choosing myself. Maya Ellis said, "This is not rebellion, this is repair," and the word repair stitched through silence. Daniel Ross said, "Your stance will isolate you," but the isolation felt like space. Claire Morton said, "Adjust your tone for longevity, and tone no longer least my name." Noah Reed said, "You sound like you belong to yourself," and my spine agreed. Younger Maya sat calm within, ribbon folded, watching me breathe. Eva Ellis said, "Even distance can be honest love," and the sentence opened windows. The community's gossip thinned into background hum, no longer script but static. The air tasted less of bargain, more of unmeasured air. I moved through each room without shrinking, proof of an ordinary worth. At work I signed my name and felt no tremor. Maya Ellis said, "This belongs to me," and the letters darkened with certainty. Daniel Ross said, "We'll credit leadership," and the statement missed its target. Claire Morton said, "The optics may shift," and I thought of glass that finally broke. Noah Reed said, "Your authorship is undeniable," and the word undeniable hummed like a chord. Younger Maya whispered, "I see you choosing me," and I breathed easier. Eva Ellis said, "You are whole outside of performance," and wholeness felt possible. The system stamped my form as if routine, and I carried it like proof that ordinary belonged. The silence after was not empty, but spacious. By evening I cooked a meal for no audience, and it was enough. Maya Ellis said, "Joy without apology is nourishment," and the flavor deepened. Daniel Ross said, "We missed your presence," but absence no longer sounded like lack. Claire Morton said, "I hope we find common ground," and I let the hope belong to her. Noah Reed said, "This is what partnership tastes like," and laughter rose without weight. Younger Maya leaned against me in memory, satisfied. Eva Ellis said, "Silence that doesn't erase is peace," and peace filled the kitchen. The past still existed, but it did not define the table. I ate until I was full, not until I was useful. The final test arrived with a call from the past. Daniel Ross said, "We'd like to bring you back into alignment," and the offer rattled like keys to an old cell. Claire Morton said, "We'll make space if you soften," but softening was no longer currency. Maya Ellis said, "I will not rent myself out for belonging," and the air steadied. Noah Reed said, "You owe nothing to their comfort," and my chest expanded. Younger Maya waited to see if I would fold, and I did not. Eva Ellis said, "Boundaries are doors that open to better rooms," and I closed the call. The silence that followed was clean, not punitive. The bargain was gone, replaced by choice. The circle closed with one sentence that would live outside me. Maya Ellis said, "I will not audition for my own life," and the words echoed clean. Daniel Ross said nothing, and silence replaced his contract. Claire Morton's careful diplomacy dissolved into distance. Noah Reed said, "Then it is yours," and the phrase folded around me like light. Younger Maya laid her ribbon down, no longer bargaining, only resting. Eva Ellis said, "You ended the loop," and the line clicked like a lock. The last breath was mine, not borrowed. The final beat was silence inside a decision I could finally bear.